welcome you all to the Gateway. This is the Gateway.
We would like to welcome you to the Gateway. I'm Stacy.
I'm Allison.
I'm Brandy, and this is our guest today, Dr. Mike Goleman, Department Chair of the Humanities, Fine Arts, and Social Sciences, and Professor of History at SCC.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Recently, Mary Taylor Huntsman had contacted me about some old documents that she had, and I was wondering if you had taken a look at those and what you could tell us about them.
Sure, yeah, I had a chance to go over there and go through some of the documents. They're from the mid-19th century, a little bit earlier, 1830s, 40s, from a very prominent businessman who lived in Pulaski County, Cyrenius Waite. And a lot of the documents are about business transactions and business dealings that he made, indicating him receiving products, sending off products, and shows a connection with this area to the regular shipping methods of the time, which usually ended up down around New Orleans. So where products tended to flow into the southern portion of the United States.
And on one of the shipping agreements, it has like things listed, you know, for sugar and flaxseed and lots of different things that they were using like in those days. Can you make out what some of the other things are that like not traditional?
Most of it was kind of traditional stuff that you would expect, especially from like a businessman and someone that was involved in merchant activities. Sugar would have been kind of one of the primary staples that's being imported into the United States. And so nothing really stuck out as being like unusual or in larger quantities than maybe would be unreasonable either.
Okay. And then for Cyrenius Waite, being so known to Pulaski County, he was a known slave owner.
Correct.
And was any of that, could you tell that, that he used slaves for any of his business doings?
I'm sure that they were utilized in, he might have taken them to unload or load. I'm sure some of the supplies maybe were to help maintain the slaves that were under his care. I went back and looked, and in 1860 he owned 31 slaves, I believe, that ranged in ages from 40 to 1 year old. Most of those dates that are listed in the 1860 census are guesses. They usually go by, like 1 year, 5, 10, 15, 20, rather than specific year numbers. But I'm sure that his slaves were employed in doing some of the manual labor for whatever is being brought in or shipped out.
31 slaves seems like an awful lot. How does that compare to like other slaveholders back then?
So if you owned 20 or more slaves during the 19th century, it meant that you are essentially part of the 1%, what we would call the 1% today. So you're the top of the top. You have a lot of sway and influence. You are.
He went over 30, so.
Yes, yeah. So he would have been extremely wealthy for the time, and probably have quite a bit of influence.
When looking at these documents, we see in movies how they have to wear gloves and have special handling. What kind of handling did you have to do? Anything to that extreme, or?
Just being very delicate and very careful. It's difficult with old documents, especially when they haven't been treated or preserved in a professional manner. You just try to be as careful as you can with them and try to, especially if there's frayed edges, not to knock off any loose pieces. So when I reviewed them, I did not have any gloves on.
Miss Huntsman didn't either. She said that now, you'll see in movies that you gotta wear gloves and all that, but now they're afraid that the cotton from those gloves will actually damage them.
Right.
Yeah. She was just really, really careful with
I
them.
haven't heard that.
Yeah,
That's
that's,
interesting.
yeah, I've never heard of that either.
So do you think that, or do you know whether or not Cyrenius Wake had any tie with SEC?
In what way?
Well, the documents were found here,
Uh-huh.
and they were given.
So, I know that there are relatives of Waite, I think are still alive, or at least, there was a book that was published in the 1950s that mentioned great-granddaughter or great-great-granddaughter that held some of his records. So I assume at some point, someone in the family or, had brought them in or donated. I don't know exactly how the documents came into the possession of SEC, but I assume somewhere down the line, one of his relatives had these documents and somehow ended up in the hands of someone here.
I guess they figured that it'd be better taken care of here
Sure, yeah.
and appreciated more.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know that it's very important for us to know our national history.
Mhm.
How important would you say it would be, how important do you think it is for us to know our local history and how, like, Somerset started? How important do you think that is?
Well, I think that's, quite honestly, it's probably more important than the national scene. Of course, it's important to understand the larger forces that are going on. But really, when it comes to our own personal lives, it's going to be that local connection that matters the most. And so understanding, for instance, and a lot of people don't know this or maybe haven't really thought about it, but slavery was actually fairly prominent in Pulaski County prior to the Civil War. There in 1860, right before the Civil War started, there were 1,300 slaves in Pulaski County. And so it's not just that one or two people owned slaves. There were a lot of slaveholding individuals that lived within the county. And, that changes or that influences the economy, that influences the daily lives of individuals. And I don't know, it just has a lot to say about the area and, again, its development, how it was historically played out.
When was slavery abolished in Pulaski County?
So Kentucky's a little bit different in the way that slavery came to an end. So during the Civil War in 1863, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation stated that any slaves in the rebelling states were to be set free. Now, technically, that didn't really free any slaves because the Union didn't have control over those southern states. But Kentucky didn't join the Confederacy. Kentucky was part of the Union. So the Emancipation Proclamation actually didn't apply to Kentucky. So it really wasn't until the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was passed in 1865, after the war had ended, that slavery kind of officially came to an end within the state.
Do you know anything about the graveyard here that is suspected to be a slave graveyard?
Yeah, so there is a site on campus out behind Festival Field that appears to be, and local tradition holds, an old cemetery. There are suspicions that perhaps former slaves were buried there, or migrants that were passing through the area that, no one claimed their body, and that was their resting place. The one characteristic out there that gives kind of credence to this is the shape of the ground. You kind of see these, it's almost like ripples, waves, at certain times of the year where you can kind of see the lay of the ground. that would indicate that the ground had been brought up and then, put back down on top of something else that was placed inside.
Do they know for a fact that they are graves?
No. There is a way to find that. You have to have very sensitive equipment and the technical know-how. The only problem is that's very costly, and so trying to find a group that would be able to come in at a price that could be affordable.
Would it be
it's a bit
cheaper to
challenging.
just exhume the graves rather than use any kind of fancy technology?
I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure if you just use a shovel, it would be cheaper. But I don't know if
What's the
anyone's-
legalities of that?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's willing to go out there with a shovel and just start digging for it.
Do you think it's a graveyard?
I do think it's a graveyard. Knowing for sure whether it's former slaves or again,
Just somebody who couldn't afford a
yeah,
tombstone or
yeah,
something?
that's more difficult to try to ascertain.
Well, do you think that or just the possible connection to slavery on campus is inspiration for the slave memorial here on campus?
Yeah, so the Lake Cumberland Slave Memorial, which is on campus, it's in the Meese courtyard on the North Campus, was a project that happened. It started in 2015, and it was in response to the shooting in a church in Charleston, South Carolina. And the individual that carried out the shooting, his intention for doing so was to cause a race war. And he was trying to incite some type of conflict through this massacre. That inspired some local citizens to do more than just, and these are their words, just a kind of a tacit recognition that there was a problem or still is a problem with race issues. They learned that at the city cemetery downtown in Somerset, that there's a section that doesn't have any markers, which is where they would bury former slaves. And so they felt that one way to honor the lives of those individuals, to recognize that they were here, the fact that they were denied a proper burial, would be to create a monument that, again, recognizes their contribution, recognizes, again, that they were humans, that they had lives, that they, whether they wanted to or not, they helped this area grow economically, socially. I mean, they were involved, they were here, they were active in doing things. But they didn't want it to be something that was just like, we place a little marker down and then that's it. They wanted to do something that
Something's going to grab attention. It
Yes.
does.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they created a committee to look at the possibilities. They put out a call for artwork. So this was like in fact, they got some international response. But a call for artists to, design something, to present it to them so that they could, select out of all of those and narrowed it down to the one that you see out there in the Meese courtyard. And again, it's there to recognize that those individuals' lives mattered, regardless of whether they had a proper burial or not. That they're part of the community.
And you said this is in 2015, so.
When it started, yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you said local citizens, like
Uh-huh.
citizens of Somerset?
So, yep.
Any of them affiliated with the college?
No. The three, they called themselves the three old white men, so but no, they were not affiliated with the college. Where the college came in was as they were investigating where to possibly place the monument. They wanted, that was part of the pitch to the artists, is where do you think we should place it? And of the finalists, of those designs that they felt were the most, outstanding, 4 of the 5 artists suggested placing it on the college campus because you have heavy foot traffic. There's educational opportunities associated with it, not with just college students, but we often have high school students, junior high students coming onto campus. That would be kind of a focal point where further education and programs could be fostered.
What other places were considered?
Initially, they had considered the cemetery downtown as a place. The problem with that is if you've ever had to bury a loved one, those plots are expensive. And so part of it was the cost of installing it in an area where you have to pay, quite a fee for placing it. There was some discussion about maybe somewhere downtown, but again, part of it too is like here on campus, we have security cameras on it. It's, even though it's a public place, it's well observed, and it just kind of, for them, made sense. And so that's when they approached the college and asked if it would be a possibility.
Who signed off on that? It's not like you could really say no to something like that.
Sure,
is it?
yeah. So at the time, Dr. Marshall was president of the college, and when they came and presented the proposal to her, she was very excited about it from the beginning and was supportive of them placing the monument. That's when I got roped into it. They had asked for the history professors to come in and listen to their presentation. And one of the things that they asked for is they wanted someone on their group from the college to kind of act as a liaison between the group and the college. And Dr. Marshall volunteered me. Of course,
I knew you'd come in here someday.
yeah. Of course, me personally, my background, my educational background is in American slavery and race relations. So it's something that I would have approached them anyway had I not been volunteered
Right.
for the project. But
Yeah, I have your book. Miss Freeze gifted it to me for Christmas last year.
Thank you. Yeah.
Who was the artist that created the memorial?
His name is Ayokunle Odoleye, and he is an artist from Georgia. He works at Kennesaw State University. And he was, again, selected out of, I wasn't part of I wasn't on the group until after they had chosen, but I think they had something like 50 plus submissions from artists, again, mostly in the United States, but they had a couple international submissions as well.
That's pretty cool that there was even international candidates.
Right,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Did the artist ever speak as to why he specifically chose that design, why the memorial looks the way it does?
Yeah, so when he created the design, he took the information that was provided in the call for artists and artwork. So the design of the memorial is the shape of a paddle, representing, crossing. So, of course, those that were enslaved were brought over the Atlantic. On top, it's essentially kind of like a bowl, and there's a picture of a bird that's looking backward, as though looking back towards Africa, the roots of enslaved Americans. And so there's a lot of there's several other kind of symbolic aspects of the design. There's notches in the side. There's a total of 9 notches, which in a lot of West African cultures, 9 is like a spiritual number, kind of like in Christianity, 3 or 12 is kind of symbolic or meaningful. So he took a lot of time to place some symbolism in it, recognizing that it was to, and kind of in his words, to recognize the path, but to show that there's ways forward together.
It is a beautiful, beautiful monument.
What is this memorial made out of? What material did he use?
Primarily stainless steel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Since this artist was based out of Georgia, how was this memorial transported Atlanta, Georgia to here?
It was on a flatbed truck, and they had to bring in a crane to lift it up. He came probably about a month prior to put in the holds that it would fasten onto, and cement it all in. So the cement was already dried, the holds are in place, so they just had to lift it up, set it down, and then, for lack of a better word, just screwed it in. And so, yeah, but it was quite a process.
How expensive is such a monument?
So we needed the memorial itself. We had to raise $50,000 just for the artwork, and then of course there's costs associated with that. So in total, we probably raised over $100,000.
Wow.
How did you all raise that kind of money?
I still don't know. At first, it went very slow. When I first joined the group, we didn't even have. I don't even think we had $20,000 that had been donated. A lot of it came from, well, most of it came from local donations. So really, it's the people of Pulaski County and the surrounding counties that help pay for the memorial. We had fundraisers. One time we brought in Mr. Ayakunle, and he gave a presentation and did a reception at the college. We had Martin Luther King event celebrations that we held raffles. We did mass mailings. We literally just walked up to people and said, "Do you want to donate?" I mean, we did everything. There wasn't just like one specific thing that we did.
Y'all hustled for it.
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. Yeah.
As a historian, do you think that we have come pretty far from what we were, or do you think that we still have a long ways to go to where we need to be and where we're supposed to be?
In terms of like race relations,
Mm-hmm.
or if you look at the progress over really especially like the last 70 years, there's been quite a bit of progress. You have to remember that's in someone's lifetime, right? So there's been measurable progress that way, but there's a lot further to go than I think a lot of people want to recognize, because that's painful. It's difficult. It's hard. It puts people out of their comfort zones to, first of all, say there's a problem. It's an uncomfortable problem, but we have to address it. And I think we saw that, especially in the summer of 2020, with the renewed Black Lives Matter protests that occurred not just in the United States but across the world. Urging for better justice for individuals regardless of race. But considering where we started from, significant progress has definitely been made.
What obstacles do you see currently that we still need to overcome?
And again, it's kind of an uncomfortable topic for some people, but it's systematic racism. So racism that is inherent in our social structure that kind of goes unseen, and especially by individuals who are not the victims of it, or individuals who are not part of the ones being affected by that systematic racism. Regardless of whether we want to recognize it or not, social justice or criminal justice is uneven in the way that it's doled out dependent on race. There are, there's not ever a long period of time that goes by without seeing it in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's because someone said something insensitive, whether it was because you have a shooting or police brutality against someone of a different color. It's always just kind of there. It's lingering, and it's hard to always pinpoint because it's kind of just ingrained, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned systemic racism. There are still people out there that think that that's something that the media made up and that it doesn't currently exist. what would be your counter argument to that?
Just because you don't experience it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So if you think it's made up by the media, then don't ask the media. Ask individuals who have been affected and impacted by it. One of the things that I definitely learned and appreciated as being part of the Lake Cumberland Slaves Memorial group is that there were times when we were kind of not doing like official business, where we were just hanging out. And I would listen to the stories of some of the other members who were on that group and listen to the things that they had to worry about that I never would have thought of or never would have worried about myself. And it goes, and really this is for a lot of different groups, not just African Americans, but it goes for women. There are certain things that women experience that I've never had to think about, whether it's, just going to my car in a dark parking lot and having the fear that someone might attack me, or, there's all sorts of things. But I think just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And part of what I think as Americans we should be willing to do is just to sit down and listen. Just listen, understand, and try to do better.
I would like to thank you for joining us today and for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you for having me.
This is the Gateway, signing out.
Okay, whenever y'all want to go, we're ready to go. I will need a good solid clap so I can sync up the video with the audio.
We would like to welcome you to the Gateway. My name is Stacy.
And I'm Allison.
I'm
Let's stop a
Bree.
second because I just walked in front of the camera.
Okay, we'll just do that.
We did that on purpose.
We need a blooper reel for this.
Yeah, blooper reel. Okay, we're ready to go. Another clap?
Another quote?
Yeah.
Okay.